You know, when we dive into the Ramayana, we usually think we know exactly who the good guys and the bad guys are. But how is it that the ultimate villain of this ancient epic can actually serve as its most profound teacher? Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to unpack the incredible tension between pure consciousness and ultimate ego. We'll be looking directly at the mindsets of Lord Ram and the demon king, Ravana. And honestly, the life lessons we uncover about power, diplomacy, and self-awareness are just as relevant to us today as they were thousands of years ago. Let's get into it. So what exactly can history's greatest villain teach us with his final breaths? We often write off villains as these purely one-dimensional, cartoonishly evil characters. But Ravana, he was incredibly complex. We're talking about a master of the Vedas, an unparalleled warrior, and a deeply devout ascetic. And yet, despite all of that brilliance, he was completely destroyed by one single fatal flaw: his blinding ego. To really grasp the profound wisdom he hands down on his deathbed, we've got to first look at the sheer staggering magnitude of the arrogance that caused his downfall in the first place. To see that ego in action, we just have to look at the Angad-Ravan Samvad. This is a literal masterclass in escalating conflict. Right before the Great War kicks off, Lord Ram cries one last time for a peaceful resolution. He sends the young, highly capable Prince Angad into Ravana's court as a peace messenger. Now, basic diplomatic protocol says you treat an envoy with respect, right? You offer them a seat. But Ravana, absolutely not. He blatantly disrespects Angad, refuses him a seat, and mocks him as just some beggar monkey. But Angad doesn't even blink. Using his mystical powers, he just coils his own tail up to create a seat that sits even higher than Ravana's throne. Talk about an absolute power move. This sets the stage for a spectacular clash of wills. And Ravana's reaction perfectly illustrates the sheer, ridiculous scale of his ego. When Angad tries to actually reason with him and deliver Lord Ram's message, Ravana just launches into this massive theatrical boast. He declares, "I am the one who easily defeated Indra, the king of gods." He brags about capturing planetary deities, claiming the very elements are terrified of him and that the whole universe trembles at his feet. And there's the ultimate irony, right? He had hoarded so much worldly power that it was literally impossible for him to fathom that a mortal prince and a monkey army could be a genuine threat. He was completely blinded by his own resume. This right here is the ultimate showdown. You have Ravana's vast, accumulated, heavy worldly power going up against Angad's simple, unshakable spiritual faith. Right in the middle of this completely hostile room, Angad issues a stunning challenge. He firmly plants his foot on the ground and says, if any of Ravana's warriors can lift this foot, Lord Ram will concede defeat and go home without his wife Sita. And one by one, these mighty, terrifying warriors try and totally fail to move it. Because it wasn't physical muscle keeping that foot glued to the floor. It was absolute surrender to Lord Ram. Finally, Ravana himself steps down to try, and Angad brilliantly just pulls his foot back. He looks right at the arrogant king and says, "Don't grab my feet. If you want salvation, go grab the feet of Lord Ram." Now, let's fast forward to the aftermath of the war and witness something truly counterintuitive. The invincible Ravana has finally fallen. But instead of throwing a victory party and celebrating the death of his ultimate enemy, Lord Ram does something extraordinary. He recognizes Ravana for what he also was, a brilliant scholar and a master of statecraft. So Ram sends his own younger brother, Laxman, to sit at the feet of the dying king and learn from him. Can you even imagine that? A victorious king sending his brother to get schooled by his mortal enemy? In an instant, Ravana shifts from a defeated conqueror to a profound, respected teacher. And here is where Ravana drops an absolutely brilliant piece of wisdom. He tells Laxman that ego, no matter the source, will eventually destroy even the greatest conquerors. But he makes this fascinating, critical distinction. The ego that comes from wealth or power or good looks, that actually has a cure. It can be diagnosed, challenged, and eventually humbled by someone who is simply richer or stronger. But the ego born of knowledge and religion, that is utterly incurable. And that was Ravana's exact downfall. Because he was so incredibly educated and deeply devoted in his aesthetic practices, his ego became completely invisible to him. He was literally blinded to his own fatal flaws because he thought he knew it all. It really boils down to this powerful distinction Ravana makes between a vidwan and a vidyawan. Ravana openly admits that he was a vidwan, a highly educated elite scholar, but all that immense knowledge carried a massive burden of arrogance. And that arrogance eventually alienated everyone, turning his own allies against him. On the flip side, he recognizes Lord Ram as a Vidyawan, someone who is truly educated and wise. Ram's knowledge was paired with this deep, foundational humility, and that humility had the magnetic power to turn even strangers into completely devoted friends. The world might fold its hands to a scholar out of fear, but it folds its hands to the wise out of genuine reverence. Now think about this for a second. Don't we usually pray for easy obstacles? We want weak adversaries so we can just win effortlessly and move on. Well, Ravana argues the exact opposite. He tells Laxman that you shouldn't evaluate your life by the quality of your friends, but by the caliber of your enemies. Seriously, a powerful, highly capable enemy is the ultimate catalyst for your own personal growth. A great opponent evaluates your true worth, wakes up energy inside you that you didn't even know was there, and forces you right out of your comfort zone. They demand that you stay sharp and constantly vigilant. In fact, Ravana takes it a step further. He says an enemy is actually worthy of respect, not contempt. Think about it. We often obsess over our enemies way more intensely than we think about our friends, right? We analyze their moves, their strengths, their strategies. And psychologically speaking, you eventually become what you constantly think about. So choosing a truly worthy, principled, and powerful enemy actually elevates your own existence. If you stoop to fight someone of low character, you lower yourself. By making Ram his ultimate adversary, Ravana practically guaranteed his own spiritual elevation. He also completely breaks down the psychology behind how we approach spirituality. Ravana draws a hard line between worship driven by kamana, which means desire, and worship driven by bhavana, which is pure devotion. When you worship out of desire, you're just treating the divine like a vending machine. You want wealth, power, invincibility, and sure, that might yield some temporary rewards. But when you operate from pure devotion, you're seeking to understand what the divine wants, or rather, you're just seeking the divine itself. It's the difference between wanting stuff from God and simply wanting God. And this leads us to a pretty beautiful realization. Externally, Ravana lived entirely as an asura. He was aggressive, possessive, very violent. But internally, at his very core, he possessed the nature of a devoted ascetic and scholar. In our final moments, ultimate liberation comes from acting on our true inner nature, not the external culture we were conditioned by. By sending Laxman to be a student, Lord Ram intentionally allowed Ravana to fulfill that internal ascetic nature, which granted the fallen king his ultimate liberation. Ram didn't just want to defeat Ravana, he actually wanted to save him. Now, let's zoom out for a second. What if we look at these characters not just as ancient historical figures, but as psychological states living right inside of us? Take Laxman, for example. His name literally translates to a mind that is forever oriented and focused purely on its target, its laksha. He represents that unwavering focus, discipline, and absolute dedication to a higher purpose. That is exactly why his character is constantly, selflessly attached to serving Lord Ram. It's the part of our brain that stays locked on the goal. And then you have Ram. Think of Ram as the pure, awakened consciousness spreading throughout your entire being. Imagine a state of absolute awareness, total tranquility, and harmony illuminating every single cell of your body. Ram represents the highest self. It's the part of us that is completely stripped of toxic ego, acting not out of selfish, grasping desire, but out of a sense of universal duty and profound, quiet humility. This is where the explainer gets incredibly relevant to us right now. Look at how the battlefield has evolved across the yugas, or eras. Back in the ancient Satya Yuga, good and evil lived in entirely separate realms. Simple. In the Treta Yuga, during the Ramayana, they shared the same realm but lived in different kingdoms. By the Dwapara Yuga, the time of the Mahabharata, good and evil were literally fighting within the exact same family. But today, in our current era, the Kali Yuga, the battlefield has collapsed entirely. The deities and the demons, the positive and negative forces, now reside within the exact same body. The epic battle isn't happening on some ancient dusty field anymore. It is happening constantly inside our own minds. So the ultimate question we have to ask ourselves is this. Can we actually spot the hidden Ravana residing right alongside our own internal consciousness? There's a saying that wherever there is a temple of Ram, there is a Ravana hidden somewhere nearby. Well, within our own bodies, our highest ideals are constantly sharing space with our deepest arrogance, our stubbornness, and our blind spots. The real, difficult work is recognizing that invisible ego before it brings our entire world crushing down around us. Ultimately, the big takeaway from this explainer is a story of transformation, not destruction. Our goal isn't really to wage this violent, destructive internal war against our negative traits.
When your internal Ram, your pure, higher consciousness, finally and fully awakens, the Ravana within you doesn't burn. Instead, all that immense energy, that drive, that knowledge, it simply loses its arrogance and merges seamlessly into wisdom. It's a beautiful integration. So I'll leave you with this to ponder today. Are you spending all your precious energy just fighting the Ravana within? Or are you simply focusing on waking up the Ram?